cover all time zones on Power Hour.
Yeah.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Power Hour. We are so glad to be here with you this Thursday morning, wherever you're tuning in from. So if you're in the Pacific, it's 7 a.m., it's 10 a.m. Eastern over in the UK. John, what time is it out there?
It's 3 o'clock here in the afternoon.
It's 3. Anyway, if you're joining us, please let us know in the chat. We would love to see where you're tuning in from, whether it's here on LinkedIn or over on Facebook or YouTube. We are so glad that you're here with us. And if you are, then you are interested in getting the needle moving in business and in life. And today we have a really special guest with us all the way from South Wales, John Espirian, one of our favorite people on LinkedIn, and an incredible coach and an author himself. So before we get into that and dive into an amazing conversation this morning about the inner workings of LinkedIn and how you can make it work for you, I want us to go around and introduce ourselves so we can reacquaint with our Power Hour crew. So I'm Claire Davis. I run Traction Resume, and I help sales leaders get jobs that they absolutely love and make more money with resumes and interview prep. So good morning, Matt. How are you doing? Would you mind introducing yourself?
Good morning. Thank you so much, Claire. Yeah, I'm excited about our conversation this morning. So as many of you know, my name is Matt Zahn. I am a story strategist. So I show leaders how to persuade with power through the art of strategic storytelling. And I'm excited about today because storytelling can be used in LinkedIn a lot. So we could kind of dive into that. I primarily focus on story strategy in workshops and one-on-one coaching. I will kick it over to you, Erin.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Erin here. I run Muscle Creative. So I connect with small businesses and medium businesses and teach them how to write copy that sounds like them. So not like a robot. And so I do that through one-on-one sessions and through my monthly membership. I too am so excited to hear from John, as there's so much to do with LinkedIn when you're trying to connect and grow your audience. And I love that he does it in an organic way. And so it keeps dollars in your pocket, which I'm all about. So I can't wait to hear from John. Dan, good morning. How are you?
I am well. Well, actually, I'm not well. I'm sick. I woke up sick this morning. My power went out 10 minutes before the show started. So, but I was like, you know what? I have to make it. I have to be here because we're once again talking about my favorite topic, and I can't miss it. I can't miss out on John being here. And I swear I haven't been influencing everyone. Like, we've been talking about LinkedIn a lot. It's not on me. It's not on me all the time.
It's not, it's true.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm so glad that you guys are with us. Dan, thank you so much for joining. Even though you're not feeling well, I'm so grateful for all of you here. And if I may, John, you are also one of my favorite people on this platform who I've met, especially here in the last year. And I think the first thing that drew me to you is that, well, first, you are a self-proclaimed LinkedIn nerd, which we all can relate to. We love that. But you're also relentlessly helpful. And I know that for myself because on every Friday, you celebrate somebody else doing great things on this platform. And I think that that is something that is really special and unique about you and something that the world and social media needs more of. So I love your Friday shout group on Fridays. And also you have incredible tips in your email. So I don't want to spill the tea on everything. So I'll let you introduce yourself, but can you tell us a little bit more about what you're doing and who you are and who you help?
Absolutely. Thank you, Claire. Thanks, everyone. I feel a bit intimidating being among a load of copywriters here. So let's focus on the LinkedIn stuff. So I'm John Espirian. I am a B2B content creator. I call myself a LinkedIn nerd because about 4 years ago, I was trying to find more clients. I couldn't say who my existing clients were. So I thought, let me dive into LinkedIn and explain how LinkedIn works to show people that I can explain how stuff works. And that has stayed with me for the last 4 years, and I've learned more and more about the platform. And now I help people rewrite their LinkedIn profiles and give them tips on how to get more visibility for their business, whatever that business might be. So, so yeah, I call myself relentlessly helpful. I'm trying to live up to that promise as much as I can. And yeah, I'm happy to fire away with whatever LinkedIn questions you've got, and let's get stuck in.
Oh, awesome. I'm so excited to chat more about this. You know what, you're right, Dan. This does tend to be a topic of ours often. And it's, you know, it's no accident because LinkedIn is really one of the last organic reach social media platforms that there is, And so what I really love are the ideas that you bring, John, and the insight that you bring for people who don't necessarily want to pay for LinkedIn, but still want to be really active and effective on the channel for their career and their business. So really excited to dive in today. And good morning to everybody joining us. Tatiana over there from South Florida, Josh, Kathy. Oh, hey, Seth, Steve, Brian, Adam. It's a full house today. You guys, thank you so much for joining us. And please feel free to pop your questions in the chat for us and for John while we've got him here for the next 30 minutes. So John, can you tell us sort of something, touching a little bit on what we were talking about backstage? Can anybody really know the secrets of the LinkedIn algorithm? Is it something that, we can know for sure at any point in time?
No, I don't think there is. LinkedIn themselves have said that there are multiple algorithms at play. There's an algorithm for desktop. There's an algorithm for mobile. There are several sub-algorithms within those, and they're testing new and different things every day. And so even if you could try and crack the code today, that says nothing about what's going to happen tomorrow. So I always start by giving people just general best practices, just treat people like human beings. So for example, when you want to invite someone to connect, maybe send them a message instead of just putting a business card straight in their hand and hoping that they're going to pay attention to you. That is going to beat an algorithm any day of the week, because that's a human action. So I treat LinkedIn as a big business room. Act as human as you can in that room, and that will trump anything that the algorithm is doing. But when we get into fine details, I mean, there's constant testing that I do to try and work out what best practice is. But I always tell people, you've got to test yourself ideally to see what works for you and your audience, rather than taking anything as gospel from someone else. And anyone who tries to say they've got all the secrets is woefully misguided or a liar. So just be careful with who you trust.
So John, I don't know if you're a hugger, but if you are and we were together, I'd be hugging you right now, because please, everybody, just be human. Oh my gosh. And I think, and John taught me already, I'm already learning from this guy. Yesterday, when I messaged him for the first time, an automated message came back with like a tip. And I was like, this is amazing. How did you do that? And he told me. And now I think I'm going to use that tip as like, or at least like when people do that, when they give me their business card, as soon as they connect with me, I'm going to be like, if we were at a networking, because we've talked about this before in Power Hour, if we were at a networking event, would you just come up to me and start pitching me immediately? No. So just be human. So thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah, you're welcome. That away message that you receive from me, Erin, actually is one of the few benefits I get from being on LinkedIn Premium. I only upgraded my account recently. I got to about 33,000 followers without paying LinkedIn a penny.
Wow.
So it definitely can be done. And all of my tips are focused on people who don't want to pay LinkedIn, and they don't want to place ads. They don't want to pay LinkedIn a monthly fee. And you can get success, but it's really important to do the things that I talk about in Content DNA, which is you've got to get this clear brand identity, which all you guys as copywriters know the importance of standing for something, telling your story, being memorable for one thing, and just turning up for long enough. So like I dived into LinkedIn 2017, nothing happened for the first 9 months, and I was going hard on this thing. Nothing was happening. And it's like 4 years since then, and now I've got like 37,000 followers. Brilliant. It's working for me now, but that's anyone who finds me now will think, oh well, this guy's successful. This is maybe some overnight success story. It isn't, and it isn't for anyone. So you just got to do this stuff for the long term, and that's the secret to success. And if you can be as personal as you can in your communications. Like we DM'd yesterday, Erin. I try and do that with everyone. It's a lot of work, but it just makes me memorable. And if you're memorable, you've got a chance of being someone's favorite, and then you get picked.
I think that's
memorable and having amazing avatars. By the way, have you guys seen John's avatars? They're so good.
So good. I got one on my mug. Yeah. So I use the free bitmoji.com service. So that's a free app. You can get it on your phone, and then you can plug it into Google Chrome. It just adds a lot of personality to my content. And people say, how did you draw that so quickly? It's like, this is a free service.
I didn't.
They have so many good ones too, and there's so many that I scroll through and I'm like, oh, I need to figure out a way to use that one.
Absolutely.
So John, when people first come to you, how do you start them out? You know, do you kind of, is the first thing you do is look at their LinkedIn profile, or do they come to you for specific things, or how does that work?
Yeah, well, if someone's coming for me for a profile rewrite, I'll always try and start with a half-hour Zoom call and say, you know, what are you all about? What are you trying to achieve? What do you want to be known for? And who are you trying to speak to? This is kind of copywriting 101. You know, what do you want to be known for, and who is the audience you're most trying to influence? Once I get that impression from people, then I go away and try and rewrite their headline and their about statement. I mean, a LinkedIn profile's got lots of components, but actually the headline and the about statement, those are the things you've really got to get right. You've got to get all the other fields filled in, otherwise LinkedIn won't list you as an all-star profile. But those are the two fields I think are most likely to be able to sell your value proposition best. Once you've got that nailed, then you can go out and start commenting on other people's stuff and pulling people back into your profile. But if you don't have your home base sorted, you know, like all the great content and all the great commenting in the world, you're pulling people to a crappy shop front then. You've got to get your shop front right, get your product right, and then go out to the world. So getting the about and the headline sorted is really important, and that comes about through consultation and then a bit of playing with the words to get the right messages into the spaces you've got.
I think that's such a great point, John. And I think, you know, you even said that we've all gone through this too, right? In the beginning, when you start, you might not necessarily know, like, all right, who is my ideal audience? Who am I after? Who do I want to actually speak to and attempt to help here? And I know you asked a couple good questions there, and it can be very difficult for people to kind of go through that exercise. So like, what was, you know, when people kind of answer you those baseline, they answer on a baseline, right? Like here's how I originally think of that. What questions do you ask them to kind of dig deeper into that point to really kind of help them find their true selves and uncover?
I think it comes down to working out who the smallest viable audience will be, and try and be as specific about that as you can. Because a lot of people will come to me and say, well, you know, I'm trying to appeal to men. Okay, so there are a lot of
just people.
That's not going to work. So you need to be ultra specific, and you need to be brave enough to know that your message is going to turn some people away. Because the last thing you want is to be vanilla, middle of the road, not offending anyone. You've got to be for someone, which means that you've got to not be for a lot of other people as well. And you've got to be brave enough. And sometimes I need to convey that to people. You know, you're not leaving money on the table by excluding people. You're possibly going narrow and deep and getting a lot more income from the people who become your super fans. So it's getting that across to people. But in terms of what you stand for, I mean, that comes from a lot of introspection, you know, speaking to your friends, your family, your best customers, looking at what people say in your email inbox. What are the things that are really true for you? So when I came up with Relentlessly Helpful as a complete accident while I was on stage once and being asked an unscripted question, and it just came out of my mouth. And here I am 4 years later and I'm still using it. But the book talks more about how you can try and develop that, because once you've got an identity that you're happy with, that you can go to bed at night thinking, this is really me, that's the thing that you want to hammer home every single time you show up. So that when you're in comments, when you're in posts, when you're on your LinkedIn profile, when you write your email signatures, when you write your invoices, your web copy, your YouTube video scripts, everything punches with that message. And that repetition really gets in people's minds. And I think that's how you build a brand.
I really like that you mentioned the repetition piece, because a lot of times, you know, the follower count can be intimidating, right? You look at somebody who's been on the platform for a few years consistently, and they've got, like you said, you know, 30,000, 50,000, 10,000 followers. And they, you know, some people think, oh, could I ever really get there? Could I, you know, I mean, how on earth, what is that secret? But really, you know, the consistency and showing up with that brand over and over that people can remember is really the key. And I just read something recently that, you know, 10 years ago, there was the rule of 6. Once you hear an advertising or a marketing message or a certain kind of branding 6 times, then it starts to sink in. But now it's actually closer to like 32. Like it's like almost 32 times we have to hear something, because we're seeing 5,000 advertising messages a day. So it's really interesting, and that you bring that up, because I think that's really the key. You know, there's no get rich quick solution on LinkedIn, right? It's that coming back and knowing your brand and reliving it every day so that it becomes recognizable and it becomes familiar, right? Familiar and consistent.
Yeah. So I think building a large audience is great for visibility, not necessarily because of direct customers, but because of people who know people who might become customers of yours. And the bigger your reach through the LinkedIn network, the more chances you've got of getting to those people. I try and tell people that maybe if you've got your profile sorted, then maybe 1 or 2% of the people who visit your profile will ultimately become your customers. Now, if you've got a low value product that you're selling as part of your suite, that can turn into a lot of business. So I've got a low value product, which is like a £10 book, about $15 book, let's say. So it's in my interest to try and get my message out to as many people as possible, because I can skim a lot of income off those people buying that low value product. But the really high value stuff comes from conversations, and that often happens in DMs. And that's the things I can't really demonstrate that to people because there's privacy involved. But I get into deep, long conversations that have no sales component to them. I'm just trying to demonstrate my brand value of being relentlessly helpful and help people as much as I can, so that when the time comes that I'll be their person of choice. And that's the thing that I want you to try and focus on in terms of building. If you're going to measure any statistic on LinkedIn, I measure loads of statistics, but the most important one, I think, is how many profile views you get. And if you have a way of measuring it, how many DM conversations you can get into. And I get into, dozens of those every day. It's a lot of effort, but it really means that I'm really closely connected with the people in my network. That's my route to business.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, John. So let's just dive into the importance for a second. So a lot of the clients that I work with are high achievers. They're extremely ambitious people, and they will do anything regarding sales and marketing to get their message out, with the exception of social media. So a lot of them are using very archaic marketing and sales practices. And again, they're unbelievably hardworking people. So when I mention LinkedIn to them, it's like revelation knowledge. They view LinkedIn as a glorified resume. So they have never even thought of putting content on LinkedIn. So to tell someone like that, that's going to tons of networking events, that they're making cold calls left and right. Just think of like very 1990 type sales and marketing. What would you say to them regarding LinkedIn and the power, the importance of it, and the amount of business one can land by shifting their focus onto this platform versus what they're currently doing?
Yeah, so this is a mindset change. So people have got to go from this is a place to host your resume to this is a fully fledged social media network. And then you get them in the mind of thinking, well, you might have paid for an opportunity to stand on stage and speak in front of 300 people. How much would you pay to stand on stage and speak to potentially, 10,000 people and give your message? And you can give your message for free as often as you want, with massive potential for the people who are interested in your service to be there listening. How much would you pay for that? So once they get that, then that kind of changes the conversation. And then it's a case of getting them to turn up regularly enough to create content. Now, the great thing about LinkedIn's algorithm is that posts on LinkedIn have a long shelf life. So a post that's made today might still be trending, in 3 days' time, which is very unlikely on a platform like Twitter. So organic reach potential is high. Shelf life is high, which means that you don't need to create that much content to get good visibility. And I recommend, people who are starting out on LinkedIn, maybe 1 or 2 posts a week is fine. Even if you're highly active, you can probably get away with about 5 posts a week, and that's highly active. What's really important for getting deep visibility with your second and third level connections, who are your potential customers in the waiting, is to make sure that you have a comment strategy. So you go out and find relevant conversations on other thought leaders in your field or in other satellite related industries. And especially if you can find someone who's highly active with a large following exist already, and if you can time your comments so that that post that they've made is relevant to you, you've got something interesting to say, and there aren't already lots of comments there, you put down something that's supportive, knowledgeable, demonstrates your experience, and you have exposure potential that is incredible. You will get through to lots of people who will never have heard of you before. They'll suddenly see your comment in the feed and they'll go, wow, who's that? We've got to go and follow that guy. And I've had loads of connection requests off the back of that kind of approach, saying, I saw you on so-and-so's post and I'd really like to connect. And of course, a proportion of those will turn into customers. So a commenting strategy, even from a standing start, you've got 0 followers, 0 visibility. That is by far the fastest way to build your reputation, build your brand, and get involved in interesting conversations. And the extra benefit it gives you is when you see something blow up in the comments that you've made somewhere else, you know what's going to work if you put that on your own feed. So commenting is a great sandbox for testing ideas that will fly on your own feed.
I think I'm so glad you brought that up, because we had Rachel Simon on last week, and that was the homework that she assigned for the audience. So raise your hand in chat if you were able to actually do your homework, if you started, commenting on other, thought leaders, other, people in your tribe this week, and how it impacted your content, your engagement. Let us know. We'd love to get that feedback. John, I know that the way that I manage this, the way that Rachel manages this, we do it kind of, very similar thing, but we kind of like manage the people that we want to engage with a little bit differently. What's your strategy for like managing your tribe, your like pocket of influencers that you want to regularly be engaged with?
Okay, so I mean, I've got a lot of connections, and so there's no way that I can be expected to engage with all of them, right? It's not physically possible for me to do. So what I do is I look very carefully at my followers and following screen. These are 2 screens that a lot of people don't know exist. So if you go into your LinkedIn profile, you'll see your follower count there. If you click on that, you'll see all of the people who follow you. But there's also a tab on that screen that says following, which is all of the people that you're following, which by default will be all the people you're connected to, because there's a one-to-one relationship there. But you don't need to stay following all the people you're connected to. You can unfollow people whose content isn't inspiring you. That radically reduces the number of people whose content gets referred into your feed. So that helps the LinkedIn algorithm make better choices about what it shows you. And another thing that you can do as well is you can bookmark the feeds of the people who are really right at the top of your list, whose content you don't want to miss. Because I've done a previous test where I found that even someone I engage with a lot and who I DM and I comment on their stuff and all that stuff, I was seeing only about 60% of this person's content, despite doing all of those good things. So actually, the only way of being sure of cutting through the algorithm's decision-making process is to go and bookmark someone's feed, and that way you know that you've got someone to go and follow up on, and maybe you nominate, like, let's say, your favorite 10 people so that you definitely don't miss their content. And the way I make decisions about who I follow is, I think I call it the 3 E's. So do they educate me? Do they entertain me? Or do I do enterprise with them? So if it's a client, if it's any of those 3, I'll stay following them. If it's anyone else, I'm probably going to unfollow them because there's just too much noise in my feed otherwise. And those are the people whose content I tend to engage in as much as I can.
That's awesome.
I love that strategy. John, I have a couple questions here in the chat, if you don't mind. One, Steve's talking a little bit about his posting strategy. He says earlier this week, he put up 2 posts. The first was an organic text post, and the other was a poll. As of this morning, the poll had about 50,500 views, 2,100 votes, and 110 replies and 43 likes. Whereas the organic text reply, which had a few of us comment on it as well, just so happens, only had 100 views, 3 likes, and 2 replies, but they were both posted within a few minutes of each other. So he's kind of wondering and grappling with, the effects of each kind of post. Right. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So there's a couple of things here. So at the moment, LinkedIn is applying some kind of artificial boost to polls. There's no doubt about that. I tested that recently where I consciously avoided all polls. I didn't like any of them. I didn't read any of them, didn't interact, and they kept showing up in my feed. So that means that the algorithm was not responding to my behavior. And so LinkedIn seems to be artificially boosting them. Polls tend to perform really well, but I get put off them because often people don't know how to ask a good question, or they give you a really poor answer set. And you feel as though people are doing it just for the engagement, not because they're genuinely trying to get some customer survey information for their business. And so on that score, I tend to avoid them, but there's no doubt that they're getting good visibility at the moment. LinkedIn doesn't like to promote 2 posts from the same author at the same time. So if you post one and it flies and you post another one straight afterwards, that one is basically going to bomb. Or much worse, it starts to take off and it puts the brakes on the first thing. So it will not want to promote two things at the same time, which means that it's kind of like planting trees. You've got to give everything space to breathe, and only when something has visibility that's starting to go down or plateauing, then that's the time to post the next thing. So if you post something and you've got on schedule to post again in a couple of days' time, but that first thing is still blowing up, pause that other one. Don't put that in flight, because it'll just kill the thing that was doing well. And so you need to be a bit reactive. And so people who schedule all of their content don't get a chance to make that intelligent decision, or maybe don't think to do that, and they miss out on visibility potential.
Yeah.
That's such a great point. So I always try and shoot for like minimum 3 to 4 hours between posts as kind of like a guideline.
Absolutely minimum, yes.
What's like and typically I just do like one per day, and I take the weekends off too. But what would you say, like, what's the longest you've ever gone if a post is doing really well and you're like, all right, I'm going to hold off on posting my content? Like, what's the longest period of time that you could, because you typically post at least once a day, right?
Well, I usually, on average, I'm averaging 5 times a week, but I would never go more than a week without posting, because I always do my Friday shout. So that's like, I've been doing that for 3 years. So that's like every Friday, that's pretty much guaranteed to go out at a minimum. Very occasionally, I won't post anything else all week, but that's really very occasionally indeed. And yes, an absolute minimum of 4 hours. I'd say more like 8 hours in between posts, because otherwise chances are that content isn't going to perform very well. I've got a buddy who posts 3 times a day and he does really well, but he's an exception. Most people are not going to get traction if you do 2 posts a day. So I go easy on that. 1 a day max and you'll be fine.
Okay. I think you just heard a big sigh of relief over.
I know.
But when you do post, it's a good idea to post enough to trigger the see more link on posts, because that, LinkedIn can't tell the quality of your content. Its AI is not good enough to determine the quality. So what it needs to do is use proxies to work out what the quality is. And one of those proxies is if a see more link is presented and a high proportion of the people who loaded that content click it, there must be something of interest there. And so any text only post that goes beyond 5 lines, or any other post that goes beyond 3 lines, will trigger the creation of a see more link. And the number of clicks you get on that see more link, it sends a strong signal to the LinkedIn algorithm about the strength of that content. So if you're a smart copywriter, you will of course prioritize line 1, because that is essentially your headline, but you will also prioritize line 3 or line 5, depending on what kind of content it is, because the lead in to that see more link could be the thing that makes people go, oh, I've got to click that. So think about it in terms of structuring a mini blog post where line 1 is important and line 3 or 5 is potentially very important as well.
No, that's great. And then is it still stay away from external links in your posts?
Yeah, well, I tested this. Now, there was a change to the LinkedIn algorithm around April, May 2020, where they introduced something called dwell time, which you'll be aware of if you understand how Google works, where the more time people spend on page or we're focused on a given post, again, the higher quality that post is deemed to have. So long as you can get people staying on the post, even if they click a link, that's still given as dwell time for the post in general. And therefore links are you can get away with using them much more than you could pre-May 2020, but you should include them only when they're highly relevant to the content being discussed. Given that you've now got 3,000 characters rather than 1,300, you've got enough space to actually write a mini blog post in. So if you can summarize the content and make it a native piece that doesn't send people anywhere, that's going to be the best user experience. So focus on that, I would say.
Yeah, selfishly, my question was very selfish, because I have a podcast every week. And so every week I post on LinkedIn when the new episode is available. And so, I'm like, do I put the link in the comments? Do I put it in the post? They need to go somewhere to listen to the
episode. So what I probably do with that one is I would give a 20-30 second teaser inside the post, maybe a video, audiogram, and then probably put that link in the comments. That's probably what I do it for that, because that's the best of both worlds. It's a native feel, and that's more likely to get people to want to listen to the whole thing, as long as you've got a good snippet.
Yep. Okay. Great. Thank you. My question was answered. We can end the show. No.
And scene. Hey, so one thing, and you guys, I honestly, like, I know we always say this half hour goes so fast, but I can't believe it's already been 30 minutes, John. Thank you so much. Before we wrap up, we always talk about, what's something that people who are here today or watching this on replay, which, hashtag replay, you guys, if you're seeing this later, what's something that people can do today to move forward with their LinkedIn?
Okay, so get the most important bit of text right, which is the start of your LinkedIn headline. So LinkedIn has said that about 59% of people view your LinkedIn profile on mobile. Right. That means that if someone is looking at one of your posts or looking at one of your comments, only the first 40 characters of your headline will be shown. That is your hook. The whole headline is important, but the hook, the first 40 characters is super important, because that could be the difference between someone going, what does that guy do? Let's check him out. Or I'm not really interested. So people who start their headlines with, I help ambitious professionals do, and you think, okay, ... what? No idea. That's not differentiated. So put your value proposition with an interesting spin in the first 40 characters. Not easy to do. You might need to hire a copywriter to help you. But if you can do that, that could be the difference between people looking at your profile and not. And if 2% of the people end up becoming customers, you want to maximize the number of people who click through. So that's the number one thing you need to do.
Awesome. Thank you so much. You guys get those first 40 characters really tight, really specific, and that value proposition right up front. Well, if anybody, I'm sure everybody watching here too is like, oh my gosh, John, I want more. So if you guys are like me, don't miss John's book. He wrote this incredible book, Content DNA, and there are all these gems and so many more in here. I learned so many things just within the first few chapters, and I am like, cannot wait to finish this thing this week. And rumor has it, John, that you have another book brewing too. So do you want to tell us really quick the title and when we can kind of anticipate that one?
Yeah, so book 2 is going to be called Relentless, and it's going to be about how to be the most helpful person in your industry. I'm hoping to release that somewhere in the middle of 2022. Don't have a release date yet, but that's what I'm working towards.
Okay. Awesome. I love it. And if you guys are looking for, short and sweet LinkedIn expertise right to your inbox, John also has an espresso group, and I believe it's like 200 characters or less, but it's great gems, and it comes right to your inbox, and it's super helpful as well. So make sure that you all, if you are not connected to John already, do it today. You will not regret it. You will learn so very much. I know I have. And as always, thank you so much for joining us for Power Hour this morning. We are so grateful for your time. We know that time is our biggest currency, our greatest currency, and the fact that you spent it with us is really something. So thank you so much for being here. And thanks so much, John, for your time this morning.
You're very welcome. It's great to join you. Thanks for having me.
Bye, everybody.
Hey, guys,
John.
until
Thanks,
next
everyone.
week. Bye.
Bye.
See you then.